Hello and welcome to this week's Hashtag Leadership What's on Your Mind, a podcast to really make you think about your leadership journey and add value to your next few steps. So today we're speaking to Steph. How are you doing, Steph? You okay?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. So Steph's going to introduce herself in a second, but I'm just going to take this opportunity to tell you guys about an exciting project that has only just launched. It's the Leadership Lounge, a place for business owners to hang out and talk around the topic of leadership and keep your finger on your leadership pulse. So we've got 20 minutes, Steph. You're a sleep expert, but I know there's so much more detail that goes into it. So I'm not going to say anything other than that. So introduce yourself for people who don't know who you are. Off we go.
Sure. I am a sleep physiologist. So I diagnose and treat sleep disorders, and I'm the founder of Sleepyhead Clinic. So that's online consultations and courses, mostly to fix insomnia, though I have done all sorts of sleep disorders, and I still work on a consultation basis for the NHS, diagnosing and treating all sorts of sleep disorders. So as you can imagine, at the moment, my time is limited and I've got a really busy clinic all the time. But yeah, that's pretty much what I'm doing most of the time.
Fantastic. So thank you so much for joining us today. It's really good to change the thread of thought on leadership, and also the people who are listening to this are in that, what I've deemed and I've seen a lot of people busy being busy. And again, it's one of the things that people don't necessarily think about, but they definitely should in high performance. So before we go into sleep, I wouldn't pass up this opportunity to ask you about what leadership means to you. And I always ask people about, are they aware of their leadership journey or when it started? So just give us your perspective on leadership.
Well, it's a bit of an interesting one because I worked for the NHS for about 10 years before I started my business. And that's quite a bubble of an organization to work for. So it doesn't really necessarily make you feel very entrepreneurial or like you want to go out and do it on your own. I would say a lot of adversity got me thinking about what I wanted to do and how I could make what we do as sleep physiologists and sleep experts available to the masses. So for me, it was more adversity driven. I think if you'd given me a very comfortable life and not given me any problems to solve, that I wouldn't have necessarily been like, I want to start a business, I want to do something. And the other thing is probably when I stopped following what other people were doing. So in business, when you first start, you listen to a lot of business advisors and coaches, and there's like a very sort of how-to dummies guide about how to do business. And I found that actually none of that really worked for me. And also following what other people were doing in my industry or the wellbeing industry also wasn't right for me. I don't know why, but that's just the way it was. So I just started doing things on my own. And when I started doing that, I started to realize when it started to work that maybe I was onto something good. I don't know. Yeah. So that's kind of it.
Good. And like say that's very entrepreneurial, isn't it? And again, the great story about when you see a gap or see a market or see an opportunity, that's when you see a lot of people succeed, because you're part of that drive and that push to go and do something. So awesome. Okay, so as we were just chatting before we came on, we've just picked 3 questions and one sort of overarching thought process of some of the questions I had posting on LinkedIn. So the first one, and these made me laugh when I was looking at these, because these are all questions that people are always thinking about. So somebody's put here, and Lindsay put, why do I feel more alert after 4 hours sleep than 8? And why do I feel lousy if I sleep too long?
Okay, there's lots of questions in that question.
I know.
So the first thing is, you can wake up in the middle of the night and feel like it's morning. I don't know if that's ever happened to you. And all it means is that you've probably woken out of a light stage of sleep rather than deep stage of sleep. So we have different stages of sleep. They're all really important, but some are lighter and some are deeper. And some you can wake out of really quickly, and some it would take a lot to rouse you. And so it could just be that when you wake after 3 or 4 hours, you're just hitting that specific time when you wake up, and actually it feels all right. And so if after a longer time you don't feel as good, you might want to try moving your alarm 10 minutes earlier or 10 minutes later to see if you can hit a wake up time that is actually in your lighter stages of sleep. And then you'll wake up feeling much more refreshed than if you woke up out of a deep state. So that's the first bit. And then she was talking about, was it feeling unrefreshed or feeling a bit groggy with too
So
much
those
sleep?
times, why do I feel lousy if I sleep? You know, when you have too much sleep. So I've experienced it as well, where I've gone, right, I really need a good sleep. And I've given myself that time to have a good sleep. And then I have that sleep, and you then regret it because you wake up all like, I've had too much sleep.
Yeah. Well, I think, there's a difference. Sometimes when we dilute our sleep too much, i.e. try and do it over a really long period, your sleep doesn't really, or your brain doesn't really like that. Your brain is all about regulation. So it likes consistent sleep every night. It doesn't want you to just have a really big bout of sleep, which is probably quite diluted and not what it's used to. Good quality sleep doesn't mean endless duration. It often means a very specific amount of sleep that you need to feel good. And the more you dilute it, probably when you sleep longer, you're probably not sleeping all of that time. You're probably having times when you are woke up or you from something, or it's just quite fragmented when you sleep for longer. It's a bit like when you have alcohol. Some people find that they just can't sleep with alcohol. Other people find that they have this really awful sleep that lasts a long time, and it's because the quality isn't very good. So yeah, sleeping longer is almost as bad as sleeping shorter.
Yeah. I listen to quite a few things that you do as well consistently, and it's that you say all the time about it's the quality that we need to be looking for, not necessarily the longer hours. So that fits into that. Awesome. So the next one made me laugh because I've heard this before. It's an old tale of, I don't know whether this is passed down to generations, but Ali Phillips has put, my mum always said that an hour of sleep before midnight counts for double afterwards. Is that right? Is that just an old wives' tale? Or what are your thoughts about sleeping before midnight or after midnight? Or
there are various things that happen to us all the way through the night. So you go through your stages of sleep, which will all happen in a cycle of sleep, and you'll have many of those cycles all the way through the night. But the specific stages of sleep and the percentages you have of them will change according to where you are in the night. That means you have much more physical restoration. This is a very simple way of putting it. Physical restoration in the first half of the night. But from what we know of sleep at the moment, you'll have more REM. So what we believe as to be where your memory consolidates, where you have psychological restoration, lots of things there, that will happen in the second half of the night. So actually, they're both just as important as each other. But it could be that because we found out probably first that you have more slow wave sleep, deep sleep, which is where you have your physical restoration, you've got growth hormones happening, cell restoration, tissue repair, muscle repair, lots of things, appetite regulation. A lot of that stuff will be happening more in the first half of the night. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen in the second half of the night, and it doesn't mean the second half is not important, because then you're having more REM, which is really important as well. Very important to have REM sleep. So you need all the stages of sleep. So actually it's not that helpful to say that, because what you'll do is you'll pressurize people into wanting to try and go to bed earlier. And what happens then? You take yourself to bed when you're not sleepy, you get wired, you get anxious, you get your temperature up and your heart rate up, and you start having an insomnia problem. Yeah. So these kind of old wives' tales, I don't think they're very helpful.
Yeah, I just laughed when I heard that one, because I've definitely heard that before, and I kind of know that it's not obviously scientific, but there's obviously, it's very unique, isn't it? And I say this about everybody's leadership journey. It's like your fingerprint. It's unique to everybody, and it's looking at what is going to optimize your performance, your leadership, your sleep. It all links together, doesn't it? So a common one here, and I've experienced this, obviously working for myself now, especially, I can imagine that you deal with this all the time, about having the accessibility to technology and social media. Neil Westhead has asked, how do you switch your brain off for sleep? Okay, on the face of it, it seems quite a simple answer, doesn't it?
But it's a complicated one. I think the biggest thing I can say is there is nothing you can do that will suddenly make you sleep. So if you're looking for that reactive treatment, and yes, you could knock yourself on the head with a saucepan. You could take a sedative and you'll get that quick reaction. They're not long term though. Those things won't physically help you long term. They'll just help you instantly. But actually, there's nothing really instant that's going to suddenly just switch you off. You can't switch off your brain like that anyway. You can't just stop thinking. It is about consistency in whatever you try. So if you're trying to wind yourself down, and you know, there's different expectations here. If you have the expectation that relaxation or anxiety reduction is going to lead to sleep, then you're wrong, because the only thing that leads to sleep is a nice strong sleep drive. So that is the build that basically the longer you spend awake, the more likely you are needing to sleep. That's the simple answer. But the problem is we have this expectation that relaxation leads to sleep. What you need to understand is that there's two separate things going on here. There's a sleep issue potentially, and it could have been caused by the fact that you became stressed and overthinking at the wrong times, but you need to treat them as separate problems. So the first issue, right, I need to find ways to wind down, and my expectation from that winding down process is just to help me feel more calm and relaxed and not to have repetitive thoughts before I go to bed. So that's one thing that you want to do. As soon as you have the expectation that it should make you sleep and it doesn't, you start to feel very inadequate. You start to feel much more anxious about your sleep. And also there's no evidence behind that. So they're two separate things, two very important things. You need to separate them. With your sleep, if you find that this has caused a sleep problem, it has become probably habitual, which means that even if I took away the stress, the anxiety, or the overthinking, you probably still wake up because your brain's used to it. And so it's a different set of things that you need to do. The best way to regulate your sleep and have that consistent quality is to wake up at the same time every single day. Use light in the morning. What you do in the morning is way more influential than what you could do in the evening before bed. Stop with all these rituals and all these things that tell you all these things that you should do before you go to bed. Yes, light exposure at night will affect you, but nowhere nearly as significant as some good old-fashioned light exposure in the morning. It can be natural or artificial, but getting outside, great. Moving, great. Eat, great, because you're telling your brain, as well as the most influential external factor, which is light on your brain, you are telling your brain that you want to be awake at that time and it's ready for you to be alert. And if you regulate all of those things during the day, like when you eat, when you move, when you get light exposure, your body understands far better when to make you feel sleepy and when to make you have a good quality sleep. Don't go to bed till you're sleepy tired. Have that opportunity there to sleep, but don't go to bed until you're nodding off. And if that's late for a while, just so be it. As long as you're waking up at the same time and you're not compensating for sleep anywhere else. This idea of being able to compensate by catching up with sleep, it doesn't exist. You've lost it. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. You're not going to suddenly drop down dead. You're not going to get a deadly disease, I promise. But just start doing things a bit more consistently. I'm not talking about being a robot. You've got to have some time off, but just do things more often than you don't in a healthy way, a bit like the eating thing. There shouldn't be anything off the menu. You shouldn't be demonizing anything. Simply, there is no clean eating. There's no clean sleeping either. It should just be, just try and do it healthier. Some more clean-ish, not clean, but like simple solutions, like literally waking up at the same time, going to bed when you're sleepy, not compensating at any other time, exercising, getting light in the morning. And I promise you, you'll see a difference in your sleep. But most people think all the opposite things, like they've got to spend hours doing lots of obsessive like rituals before they go to bed in order to sleep. And then, what can they do instantly in the middle of the night that's going to make them sleep? Well, the fact that you're even thinking that way is not good. You should just think, do you know what? It's fine. I'm not going to sleep tonight. This is going to build up my sleep drive, which is really healthy for me. I'm going to go off to another room. I'm going to go and enjoy myself because I'm not sleeping, and there's no point making myself feel more anxious because it will make me feel worse. And then I'll go back to bed when I'm sleepy later. Perfect.
Yeah. I love that. There's so many things in there that made me sort of like laugh, and I can imagine some of the rituals that you've heard people are trying to do to get themselves asleep.
Yeah.
I had something about 2 months ago, and I actually woke up because I'm running and driving my business forward, completely different to being employed, as you will know. Yeah. And I woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I got up, I did an hour from 4:30 till 5:30, got back into bed, woke up in the morning, and my wife was like, did you get up in the night? I was like, yeah, I did an hour's work. And she was like, you're crazy. I was like, but at that time, I was awake. And if I could have quite easily sat there for an hour and been annoyed that I was trying to go to sleep again. Awesome. That's right. And do you know what? You said gave such a great answer then. One of my general questions of number 4 was a lot of the answers, the questions were because we're all business owners trying to squeeze as much time out as possible. It's like, how can I sleep for less? Not necessarily how can I sleep for less, but how can I optimize as little time, because I think need to do so many hours awake. So that must be quite a common thing that you come across as well.
Yeah, and actually what you just said there about doing an hour of work in the night whilst getting up and doing something you enjoy is a good thing. Be very mindful that if you start doing that long term, you'll get into a habit and your brain will be like, oh, he wants to work in the middle of the night. And even if you don't want to get up, it will start making you think that you do. So when you get up in the middle of the night, the best thing for you to do is just leave the room, go and do something, but just chill. Don't make it repetitive or habitual or anything like that. Just go and do something that you enjoy that's fairly relaxing and then come back. But in terms of that idea, so we've just come out of a generation of people that thought they could sleep when they're dead, right? All these big CEOs. And we're realizing now that people should not have been skimping on their sleep to try to get more out of the day. In fact, we showed that their performance was worse, that people who sleep more are much more successful. And so you're better off trying to sleep more. However, you cannot force yourself to sleep. So now we're moving in a generation where everybody's obsessed with their well-being and they're trying to sleep more by literally just taking themselves to the bedroom and lying there. And what happens? They get anxious, they get stressed, and they actually cause sleep problems. So the best thing you could do is always just make sure that you do have an 8-hour opportunity to sleep. Now, what does opportunity mean? It means you know that there is a bed where you will not be disturbed, where you can sleep or rest if you need to, but you won't have to take yourself to bed. You do not have to aim for 8 hours. Everybody is different. There is no specific time. Don't listen to anything that tells you that, because you are unique, but you probably know what that is, or just go on holiday for a week and it will tell you how many hours it feels you need. Keep your wake time the same. Just keep that one thing the same and you'll start to see regulation happen, especially if you're not compensating elsewhere like napping, and you'll start to see how much sleep you need at night. And that's how to efficiently get it. But going to bed at very structured times, if you're not sleepy, is not a good idea. Yes, eventually, if you're waking up at the same time every day, you will notice about the same time at night you start to get sleepy, and you can start to think about how you might do a routine around that. But keep your routines loose. You never want to become so structured that going out causes you anxiety. Just spending time with your friends. We're social creatures. We need to spend time with other people, even if that means a late night every now and again. And actually, for the real people that want to get, they really want to get something out of their sleep, a bad night can actually be really good for you. It can help reset you. If you get less sleep one night, but instead of compensating by going to bed early or lying in and doing all that stuff, you don't do any of that. And you force yourself to get up, have a great day, go and do some exercise, go see your mates, have a great working day, no matter how you feel. I promise you, if you go to bed when you are actually sleepy, the efficiency of your sleep will go high. You will have better quality sleep. So your brain actually can fix itself. The reason that sleep problems start to happen is because we don't think sleep problems are normal. Actually, they're totally normal. After something has happened to you, 3 weeks of sleep problems, totally normal. But what happens is we freak out. We worry about the lack of sleep. So we change our behaviors. So we dilute our sleep. We compensate by lying in, napping, going to bed early, doing all these rituals which just make us hyper anxious about sleep in the first place. And we actually end up making it worse. So just bear that in mind.
Yeah, that's amazing. I feel like I should say that I only did that once when I feel like I was getting told off at one stage.
No, I'm sorry. No, it's not the end of the world. I just don't want you to make it a habit because you thought I told you to.
Yeah, because I totally get that, because if your brain is repetition, isn't it? And if you get into that routine, yeah. So we've got a couple of minutes left, and this question came up, and it's very personal to me. I've just changed this, and I want to know your thoughts. I've always been this night owl, early bird mentality.
Yeah.
I've just literally this morning tried, and I'm going to have the September as the month of when I wake up a little bit earlier, to have an hour before the kids have got that routine of going to school. I got into the habit of getting involved in the school thing, let's call it, and then I'd end up starting to work at like 9:30, 10 o'clock. So I'm now getting up, walking the dog, training, doing a little bit of work, and then helping with the kids. So what's your thought process and your when if people think, oh, I'm a night owl, I've got to do the early morning thing, or vice versa? What do you reckon?
It is true that we all have our own sort of circadian phase. So what I mean by that is we have a different timing of sleep to the next person, but most of us are fairly normalish. And actually, when we talk about being extreme night owls or morning people, it's largely psychological and environmental and behavioral. So what I mean by that is, yeah, if you work late at night, you're going to get your body used to working late at night, and then you're not going to want to do stuff in the morning. Our behavior dictates our physiology so much more than we realize. It makes me laugh how we don't realize this, or it's not that we don't realize, it's that we don't really want to take responsibility, because that means that we have to do something about it. Whereas if you can just blame it on some mysterious night owl feature, then you're like, well, that's me, I can't do anything about it. And actually very recently we did a few more studies on this and proved this very recently, over and over again. We've always done that. There is true extreme night owls and morning people. It's a circadian rhythm disorder, and I wouldn't wish that on anyone, because it means that especially in a westernized 9-to-5 society, that's quite hard to regulate. Because if you're naturally wanting to go to bed at say 4 or 5 a.m. every night, and you're not getting up before midday, it's incredibly hard for you to live a proper life. So actually the answer is it's mostly behavioral.
Yeah, I know. Awesome. Well, Stephanie, I heard that was the buzzer going off. So I know 20 minutes flies by, and thank you so much for all that great content and adding value to everybody. So yeah, guys, if you enjoyed that, make sure you hit some comments in the comments below. Let me know what your takeaway was. If you've been watching us on the YouTube channel, fantastic. Hi, make sure you subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to us on your podcast provider, make sure you hit us a review and follow. And every episode comes out at 6 a.m. every Wednesday morning. So Steph, thank you so much again for your time. I'm sure we'll get some requests for you to come back at some point, and we'll get some more questions for you. But thank you so much. Good luck with all the stuff you're working on in your business, and I'll continue following and listening to you.
Thank you.
Awesome. So guys, make sure, I mentioned at the start of the show, we've got the Leadership Lounge. There'll be a link below for you to come and join us. And thank you so much, and we'll see you next week. Take care. Bye.